Welcome to the Radio Toons podcast, guys. How's it going? Ernie, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, man.
I'm Steve.
I'm Ernie.
So I know what you guys are thinking. You guys think we saw The Incredibles. We didn't, okay? I'm very disappointed because I couldn't make time to go see The Incredibles. I'm so hyped for that movie.
I'm telling you, dude,
I still haven't seen it.
That blackout last week really set us back.
No, I really wanted to see it. I'm hearing great reviews from it and stuff, and I actually thought we would be able to see it before this podcast, and it would just be The Incredibles cast. But it's not.
There's been a lot of stuff to do over the weekend. Me especially, have been getting super busy. I didn't even get to see Deadpool 2, and that came out like a month ago.
Oh, yeah.
I still haven't even seen
Deadpool. I forgot about that.
I love Deadpool.
Yeah.
I just still haven't gotten a chance to get out of here and see it, you know.
Did that movie do well?
It's doing great. It's doing great, dude.
It's
doing better than Solo.
That's not saying a lot.
No. It's not doing better than Solo. But, like, it's been reviewed way better than Solo, I should say.
I'm actually surprised because I don't hear people talk about it. But maybe it's just because I don't know.
You know what's crazy about Solo?
What?
I heard it's going to be the first time that Star Wars doesn't perform. Like it's going to be considered a loss at the rate it's going.
Star Wars ED, if you will. You know, they don't
ED.
Yeah, they can't perform erectile dysfunction.
Oh my god,
is that not good? Is that not good?
Star Wars that can't get hard.
Yeah.
I don't know about that, Steve. But it's kind of trippy because this will be the first time that Star Wars doesn't do well. And it had a great director attached, Ron Howard.
You're telling me that Attack of the Clones did well?
Yeah, surprisingly, yeah.
Wow.
Because, like, think about it. The first one, everybody was like, "Oh, dude, it's awesome," and then it flopped. But in the second one, they're like, "We got rid of the kid.
Yeah.
We're going hardcore. We got fucking this great-looking dude. We got Padme in full form. You know, we got a huge Star Wars lightsaber fight. It's going to be great," and did well. And then on the third one, they're like, "It's Darth Vader."
Yeah,
Darth Vader.
It's true. They were like, people had an excuse every movie. And
the second one actually, the thing that I think brought everybody together was like Jango Fett.
Yeah, I guess
and they were just like, "Oh."
Yeah, Boba Fett's getting his own movie, and I don't understand that shit.
You know what?
How in the hell?
You know what? I know our friend Kevin is just like screaming right now, but I don't give two Fs about Boba Fett. I've never understood the hype behind Boba Fett, and
I don't really
before
understand
the toys that made us. You know, when we watched that whole thing, the thing with Boba Fett, I see why they got the hype because it was like he was in the cartoon, and then he was going to be an exclusive toy, and then he came out in the movie and it was like, whoa, you know, it built a lot of hype. So if I had lived all that, maybe I'd be like, Boba Fett for life.
I don't know, because I have friends my age that love Boba Fett, and I always just thought like,
but why? I mean, have they been able to explain it to you?
I probably think they just think that he looks cool, because I assume that he's like, I don't know, like badass somewhere else. Because in the movie he doesn't do much. He gets kicked, right? Or
you're right.
He gets shot into a Sarlacc pit like right away.
He stands around. Next to Darth Vader, while they while they do the thing to Han.
Yeah,
you know. But he tracked Han, and then he did that.
You know what's the most disappointing about all this is that they have so many good Star Wars stories, and Disney's just like, "Nah, we're not going to use those anymore." Like, you have Knights of the Old Republic 1 and 2.
Yeah.
You have Shadows of the Empire. You have Jedi Academy.
Right.
You have all these fucking video games that have like amazing stories with original characters.
Yeah.
And they're just like, nah, we're not going to use those. We're just gonna give Solo a backstory. You know, like how does that?
You know, it's so funny you bring that up because the wife was saying it feels like they're doing the opposite of what Marvel's doing.
Yeah, Marvel's doing a good job of actually...
They're like adding characters to their roster all the time. And making this big universe that has all these different little pieces and little references to each other.
Yeah, they're branching out.
Exactly. But Star Wars is like going backwards where, like, for example, in the Solo movie, you have all these characters, and then they all start getting killed off one by one.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
It's more of like a bottleneck, you know?
Yeah.
They're coming into a bottleneck, and then they're doing the same thing, like another bottleneck. It's not really much of a universe. It's
exactly.
More like
it doesn't feel more expansive. It almost feels like you're closing it off more.
You know, I was telling you that the other day, too, because it, like, had just dawned on me that, like, Captain America 1, right? Mm-hmm. Captain America has his regular suit, because that's where he got it.
Right.
Captain America 2... he's mostly Steve Rogers in that film. It's not till the end where he goes home and puts on the suit from the museum or whatever.
Right.
And it's like, oh, he got the suit from the museum. It's not like he just had it in his closet or anything.
Right.
And then part 3, he actually loses the shield. Mm-hmm. He actually gives it back to Tony Stark, and I was like, oh, that's why he doesn't have it in Infinity War. So it's almost like in my head, I'm like, they're actually like moving forward. They're leaving things behind with each movie. You know, like they
did the same thing with Thor.
Yeah,
because Thor 1
Mjolnir breaks in Ragnarok. Yeah,
and so there's a significant change from like the Dark World to Ragnarok, and from Ragnarok even till Age of Ultron.
Yeah,
from Infinity War. Sorry, where he like replaces the eye and he gets a new weapon. Yeah. So it's like every character kind of moves along. It's funny you say that because like in the movies, Steve Rogers progresses the most in his costume changes because like Tony does too, but it's only like his excuse is he's always expanding his suit or whatever. But like Captain America actually goes from being Captain America, then Steve Rogers, and then back to Captain America, and then he becomes like they never really say it, but he becomes a nomad, and it's when he's against the U.S. government, so he doesn't really have he doesn't really have a place to call home, so he basically goes all around the world and just goes where he's needed. Yeah. So that's kind of his look in the Nomad. He's just all in a blue suit.
Yeah, I like that though. I was like surprised to see them actually take like these steps towards like what am I trying to say, like progression and not just like harping on the same shit. Because like Spider-Man, for instance, like the Sam Raimi Spider-Mans that didn't hold up very well, or just kind of like
I still like the first one. The second and third one are just like
I was pointing
out going off the rails, but the first one I still think is very solid.
I was pointing out to my coworker the other day that scene where Mary Jane is swinging with Spider-Man for the first time.
Oh my god!
It's a mannequin.
You've told me that so many times.
It's so stiff.
And every time you tell me that, you laugh so hard. Because like, hey, you know that scene with Mary Jane?
Because that scene is such a mess. Her hair is like going the wrong way too. It's not even going with the wind. It's going like the wrong. It's just such a mess. But you know that was before superhero movies really had like a criteria and all that stuff. You know
listen. So far, my favorite Spider-Man movie is Homecoming. That should tell you a lot because, for one, he's a funny, sarcastic kid. And that's essentially what Spider-Man was to me. He's a scientist. Like they do the whole. Those are my web shooters, and I'm kind of I'm a scientist and shit, and like that's pure Spider-Man, you know. Yeah. The Sam Raimi one took more liberties and was more about like this. They had this whole thing where it wasn't so much that Peter was smart or quippy or anything. It's just things happened to him.
That's what I mean, like. That's not how they're doing the Marvel movies nowadays.
No.
Like if they made another Spider-Man Homecoming, I would expect a significant change in either like his character or his costume or some kind of arc.
Right.
You know, that had to do with the comic book. Which I love. That's what's so great about the new I mean, Captain America obviously are probably some of my favorite films from the Marvel universe. I really like those.
Oh yeah, Civil War I think is like my favorite Steve Rogers or Captain America one for sure.
Every time I see it on Netflix and I see the trailer for it, I'm like, I kind of want to watch this.
That scene at the end of that where they're beating the crap out of Tony. I know it's like, oh man, I just love seeing Bucky and Steve take it to Iron Man for some reason. Because here's the thing, right? Not to get too far into this, right? Because I know we've already kind of talked about this, but throughout the entirety of the series, Iron Man is always the problem. Yeah. It's always Tony Stark's fault, and then he tries to fix it, and then he makes it worse in the next movie. Like, each time he makes it better in his own movie, he ends up making it worse later. And in this one, in Civil War, He's like trying to keep everybody together, and he's just like, "Hey, Steve, don't be so like you're not thinking clearly. It's all about your emotions. I'm trying to fix us."
Yeah.
But at the end of the movie, Iron Man is the one that's all guided by his emotions, and he takes it out on Bucky. He's like, it wasn't none of that crap is Bucky's fault. He's being controlled. Like what? Like I don't know. Everybody's obsession with Bucky gets annoying after a while because it's like, who gives a crap? He's not that person anymore. So why does anybody care?
I will say that Tony Stark's a very emotional person.
He is super emotional,
and that's why I think his character is really believable.
I think so.
I don't know.
I mean, it's like I said, it's annoying as a trope because it's always Tony's fault kind of thing. But it fits into his personality.
Yeah, I don't know if it's just because like Robert Downey Jr. plays that character so well, but it's just like to me, I'm like, I don't know. I don't think Robert Downey Jr. is playing Tony Stark. I think Robert Downey Jr. really is exactly like Tony Stark. Yeah, like some guy who came out of rehab. And
exactly.
Yeah, no,
he totally is.
What were we gonna say? Nothing.
It's just too close. I wonder if Robert Downey Jr. will be able to escape this role after this movie. Like because according
he's gonna be Sherlock again. Right?
Yeah, I think that's a good move because after the next movie, I think that's the end of the current. Of the original Avengers, I think they're gonna not kill them off per se, but they're gonna all kind of retire. Yeah, those characters, and they're gonna make new ones.
Because my friend that reads the comic books was telling me that at one point Winter Soldier's Captain America or something, and even Falcon at one point is Captain. So if they ever want to do those things, they have tons of material. There. But by the way, Luke Cage Season 2 is coming out this Friday. Yeah,
that's right. I haven't watched the first one, but just seeing the trailer makes me want to go back because he was such a big part of Jessica Jones. At least the first, he was a big part of the second season. At least the first 4 or 5 episodes. And then it just made me want to go watch it because he was also part of Daredevil's thing, and then the Defenders.
I would say if you have nothing better to do, go watch it. I'm not saying it's a bad show. But it definitely wasn't my favorite. It was just okay. You
still would rather watch that than Iron Fist, right?
Yeah, probably. It's because Luke Cage was good, but once it ended, I noticed that the ending wasn't so big. You know, so it was the kind of show that as I was watching it, I was like, man, this is good, this is good, this is good. And then the last 2 or 3 episodes, I was like, they didn't know how to end it, I think, and they just kind of or the things that I was expecting to happen didn't happen, or
you know what?
Luke Cage himself isn't that interesting of a character, I would say. Either.
And here's why, right? And I did watch 2 episodes of the first season, but I didn't want to kind of comment on it since I didn't see it. But the fundamental problem with Luke Cage as a character is the same problem I have with Superman as a character. Is his invulnerability makes him boring. The great thing about Jessica Jones is she does have these powers. But she's not invulnerable. She can still be shot. She can still break her arm and all that kind of stuff. So she is powerful, but she's still human kind of thing.
Well, the other thing, too, is that, Luke Cage is just a good guy. First episode, he's, he has a towel over his shoulder, and he's just like, I'm a good guy,
There's no arc behind him.
Yeah, exactly. He's not, there's no change in him throughout the show. Maybe a marginal change in some way, but Jessica Jones season 1 is she's fuck everything, fuck the world, everything was taken from me, I don't care. And then by the end of the show, she's just okay, my family is the people who I have now, and there's a real change in her. And Luke Cage is just kind of I'm bulletproof the whole show.
Yo,
yeah, I don't know.
And then, I'll say this too, Daredevil, and the reason I like Daredevil is he had a big arc too, because yes, he's a good guy in the beginning and the end, but the thing that tears him apart is him trying to be both a Daredevil, be Daredevil, and be the lawyer.
And it's kind of like a typical angle for a superhero, but I don't know, it works for me. It's done really well.
It works.
I mean, it probably has a lot to do with the fact that it's the first one that was done. No, I
think if I had watched it after all the other ones, it would have been fine because
No. I'm saying they put effort into the first one.
Oh.
Because it was the one that's going to launch this series of Netflix shows, you know?
Well, in that regard, yes.
Because
being the first one made it more powerful for
because
sure.
it's like you have these fight scenes in Daredevil that are like historic. Like people are gonna remember these moments on television. It got awards and shit. Remember that? Like
I did.
It
deserved them.
And to go from that to like Iron Fist, it's like, no, dude. Like Iron Fist fight scenes don't even hold a candle to like the stuff in Daredevil. And like, I honestly think the only show that really rivals it in terms of like, I don't know, like cleverness and like writing is Punisher. I really liked Punisher when I saw it. So
Punisher's really good. By the way, I totally forgot. Speaking of Punisher, he was one of the cops in the first season of Walking Dead.
Okay.
I totally didn't put that together.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
He's from that show?
Yeah, the other day they talked about how he's going to be on the new Walking Dead seasons.
Oh, okay.
Because Rick Grimes, the guy who plays Rick Grimes, he's leaving the show next season. So, like,
how's that show still on?
I don't know, man.
How
like,
are they still walking?
People are still
here?
watching it. I mean, it's gone bananas in terms of, like, are they following the story of the comic books? No, it's totally off the rails, but it's kind of its own thing.
At this point, they're just like sitting in buildings like, are the zombies still out there? Yeah. All right, well.
Should we go out there? I mean, I wouldn't. Are we hungry? Yeah, I guess let's go try and get some food or something.
I have a baby! No!
That zombie looks like somebody I know. Yeah. Don't go out there.
They're dead. No, it's
not
them. It's not them.
They're dead. They ain't coming back. They're brain dead.
But yeah, so I'm gonna try to check out Luke Cage. You know, it's in my home. Mm-hmm. Way easier to check.
Queue.
Yeah. I'm gonna see what it's like. You remember Misty Knight from the Defenders?
Yeah.
Spoilers if you guys haven't seen the Defenders. She has a little amputation, if you will, and they show her with like a new limb, if
DMC
you will,
5 style,
if you will. Don't even bring that up, please. Just don't. I'm not even talking about that.
Yeah, so it's like they've continued the
what?
It's a continuation, so you know that there's a.
Oh yeah. But apparently that's something in the comic books too, so people are glad to see that come to light and all that stuff.
Yeah. Plus, something like that changes a person for sure.
Yeah, sure, I guess so.
No, I mean like their attitude, their like a physical change. Like I attribute it to kind of like how Hideo Kojima always used that as a transition for his characters. Them losing limbs, represents losing the part of their life to like their innocence or whatever.
Okay.
So like cutting off their arm is a physical reflection of them losing a part of their life.
Well, who besides Otacon loses something? Or I'm sorry, Ocelot loses something.
Raiden loses so many body parts.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Are you talking about Big Boss too? Then I guess.
Yeah, Big Boss.
Loses an eye.
I'm trying to think. Well, I'm saying body parts, not just like whatever. But like Big Boss lost his eye too.
Sure.
And
okay.
Yeah. Anyway, other stuff that we watched on Netflix.
Yeah, you were talking earlier about that Boba Fett toy and how we saw it on Toys That Made Us.
Yeah. Toys That Made Us had a season 2. Yeah, dude.
A heaping helping.
Oh my goodness.
Portion of season 2.
Okay, so there's 4 episodes to the next season, and it's Hello Kitty.
Yeah. Transformers,
Star Trek, and Legos.
Yeah.
Now, before we go into all of them,
okay,
which one was your favorite out of those 4?
Surprisingly, I don't know. You know, because let me put it this way. I thought Lego was going to be the obvious choice.
Uh-huh.
I really liked the Hello Kitty episode,
and
I really liked the Transformers episodes.
Uh-huh.
The 2 that I had the least interest in. You know, I was like, if anything, Star Trek or Lego. But no, those were actually... The stories weren't as interesting as I thought they were. What about you?
I for sure had a top 2.
Okay.
And it was Transformers.
Transformers?
And Star Trek.
Because...
And we'll go through them now kind of thing, but which one do you want to start with?
Well, I don't know, because... Let me start with the Lego one then, and why I thought it was disappointing. Because we watched it a while ago, and I'm not sure I even remember what the Star Trek one was like.
I'll remind you.
But the Lego one...
Uh-huh.
I thought was going to be like this awesome story about how Lego, you know, they patented their little... What are they called?
The bricks.
The bricks, but they have those circles on the inside that interlock.
The Lego system.
Yeah, and that's what makes it so good because other blocks would fall off of each other.
Their original concept was essentially if you take a Lego brick and you look at the bottom, those 3 little circles. Yeah. If you take those out, that's what Lego was before.
They were like cylinders. That's
right, and they didn't collapse together. They kind of just sat on top of each other like Lincoln Logs. Yeah. If anybody remembers those.
So once they got that lock-in system,
the Lego system.
Yeah, these shits like went crazy.
And by the way, they said I can't tell you how many times they said Lego system. So in the thing, it was so funny because they would talk about the Lego system throughout the thing.
I thought the system was in reference to the fact that all the blocks are the same amount of like squares.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. It's like once they got that 3-piece thing, they started formatting everything so it was in terms of Lego blocks. Like the little Lego people are 4 blocks high. Like the cars now had to fit Lego people in them. So So this is when they really started to develop a system. And like the super interesting part about it was, and this is why it made it a little not as exciting to me. It was like Lego's theme, if you would have it, is like consistency. Yeah. Right? Every Lego that you've ever bought can be used with any Lego you will buy in the future. Right. And that was kind of their thing, is like it was all part of this system, and you shouldn't break the system, and the system is what makes this work, because young and old, freaking unimaginable, and people who love instructions and just want to build the model, everybody can enjoy Legos in any facet that they want to. Right. So that was kind of the whole thing, and they were just taking you through years where they're like, we needed a new way to sell it to the kids. So
well, you know why the reason I thought it was kind of boring was because there were so many times where they were like, Lego was in the red, and they had this little animation of like a tree dying. Yeah. And I was like, damn, like Lego almost died so many times, and it was like 3 times. It wasn't. Yeah, it wasn't as of just recently with the Lego Movie that they've just like shot up again, and they're good again for a while. Right. I would assume. But what was interesting was that the story about how Bionicle was created. They commissioned some guy to write the story for it. Yeah. And I don't know why they bothered to mention it, but he had like a tumor or something in his head, right? Mm-hmm. It was... I don't know why they mentioned that, but he...
well, it was... The reason they mentioned it is because it's like... It was one of those things that pushes you... Like, when you have kind of a life scare, as you have it, you tend to be like, well, let's just go all out. Let's just get crazy. Let's do all the things that I would never do. What was That's cool, what his mindset was.
What was cool about that story was... And we were talking about this too beforehand when we were watching it. That guy had the mentality of a child. Mm-hmm. Because they came up... They wanted to do this new thing, and he said, okay, I like these Bionicle guys, but I want to give them a real backstory. Where do they come from? So he came up with the island, and he came up with all the characters. He came up with the mask concept, right? As to why they have to collect the masks, and it's just shit that kids eat up. Right. Like I remember when me and you, when we first got Bionicles and we saw them in like their color coordinated cases. Remember that? Yeah. I was like, "This is fucking badass!" Like it was a big deal for kids at that time because it was like. When I say the kids, shit that kids eat up, it's like Power Rangers. Like, you have like the Green Ranger that's all green. It's like, oh, that's my dude. Like it's just something they can identify with, even if it's something as like as trivial as just a color. Mm-hmm. It's like they'll latch onto it and they'll make that their personality. Like, and it was just crazy how this guy was so in tune with what kids wanted to see. Like.
Well, I think the great thing about Bionicle was it had the depth of like a video game. But it had the easygoing nature of Legos. So it was all color coordinated. Each of them had a personality attached to their color, very much like Power Rangers, like you're saying. Yeah. But everything was so like the whole packaging of it was thought out, because this is what I remember most about it. What was cool is that they all had disc launchers. Yeah. Right? So they all could launch a disc. So even if you lost a disc from yours, he could use another person's disc.
Yeah. It was part of the system.
It was part of the system for Bionicle. Yeah. And what was cool too is like their case, like the thing that came in was an actual Lego bin. and it was their spaceship.
Yeah.
So they folded into it in a certain way.
Yeah.
Like a transformer, and then you could like fly them because that was their spaceship that they took off in.
I love that so much too, because in my head I was like, this is like when they put Buzz Lightyear in his ship as the box. It's like, that's such good marketing. Like you're giving them something else to play with. It's not just a case, you know. It's like it's somebody who kind of understands that. Look, this thing could fall apart. They pull it apart all the time.
Yeah. It'd be nice if they had at least like it's not the sturdiest case, but it's still it's sturdy enough where you could put this away in its box and keep it organized. And like people underestimate that so much, but in my head when I was a kid, anything that you could put kind of in a box and put away was super cool, because then it was kind of like a book where you could like take it out, undo all this, and then kind of put it back on the shelf, and it would look cool.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think they thought about that, because most of our toys would just go in a bin and we kind of forget about it. This was one of those things where you could set it up on your shelf because the case looked like a spaceship.
Yeah.
You know? And I think they underestimated that.
And to go along with like the color coordinated thing, when you're a kid, if you don't just have one of these things, if you're like an adult collector, it's one of those things where you're like, well, if I have green and red, I gotta have blue, orange, and purple. You know, like you have to have the whole set.
You have to have the whole set.
They look good. And that's another way they were just like fucking smart, dude. Like,
what's funny is that was probably the most interesting part of the whole thing, because that was one of the times that they went kind of out of their system.
They did. They went out of their comfort zone a lot, I would say, to do that.
Well, that in particular, because none of those Bionicles fit in the system.
No, they have their own kind of system though, and you know it's not that we're so in tune with like Lego stuff nowadays,
right?
But the other thing they talked about was Ninjago, and that
Ninjago is so huge.
Ninjago is huge, and I didn't even know that. Like
it's so like I'm a grown ass man, right? But occasionally I go back to Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon, and I watch what the kids are watching. Most of it's 3D, but Ninjago is so huge because they have it on all the time. Our nephew was into it for a minute, and had the little Ninjago sets, and it feels like a smaller version of Bionicle because, like you were saying, red, blue, white, all that kind of stuff. They color coordinate the guys, and they give them backstories, and they did this whole world. And then they attached a cartoon to it, and now it's part of the the Legoland. Now it's part of Legoland.
Yeah, exactly. What's cool too is like they were really making the right decisions like nowadays. The Lego movie came out and they did Lego Batman, and now they're gonna do Lego Batman 2 and Lego.
You know what's crazy is that at the time, Lego Batman 2 ended up doing better than the Batman movie at the time.
It's not out yet.
No, Lego Batman, I'm sorry, not 2. But the Lego Batman movie ended up doing really, really well. And it did better than the Batman movie that had come out previously.
Yeah, it's pretty sad the best DC movie is Lego Batman.
Yeah, that is really sad.
But you know what? You know what's cool? A little fun fact about the Lego movie. I think we noticed this too when we watched it the first time. I just saw like this thing on Twitter that they were people gush about stuff on Twitter. They were talking about how like when they do smear animation effects in the Lego movie,
right?
They use other bricks. so if they jump up somewhere, they just stack bricks on top of their feet for a frame to make it look like a smear animation.
That's cool.
Yeah, and I noticed this too when we were watching the film. Is like the blasters, when they were blasting stuff, they would have like the plants put on the gun, like the plant piece.
Oh, the flare, you mean?
Yeah, and it would simulate like the effect of like a flash of a gun.
Yeah,
but it was just another Lego piece.
They did that with explosions too. Whenever anything exploded in the Lego movie, not in the Batman one, in the Lego one, it would be the little fire. They would have the little fire bricks, and then they'd have different colored bricks to go with that as well.
Yeah,
like in that movie in particular, they did as much Lego as they could. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they had to. Yeah.
So that's basically Lego.
The Lego one's a little bit depressing, I will say.
No, that's not the one that's depressing to me.
Which one?
Because that one, it was like Lego wasn't cool, then it was cool, then it wasn't cool, then it was cool. They kind of went up and down because they also had a time when they were licensing Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And they were so they had their ups and downs, but now they're doing like gangbusters right now. But for the most part, it kind of stayed the same.
So which one's sad is what you're saying?
Well, the saddest one. But the saddest one to me was Star Trek, to be honest.
Okay, why?
Well, because it didn't have a great start.
Okay.
When they talked about Star Trek, it was like... the running gag was like some other space movie that was doing way better. And it was like they kept comparing themselves to Star Wars.
Yeah.
But it was like when Star Trek first came out, according to this documentary, it didn't do very well.
Right.
And so went into syndication because back in the day, you know, they needed to fill time in a lot of networks. So they took Star Trek and they just put it into some weird time slots, and that's where it gained popularity.
Yeah, you know what's funny is Cheers did that too. Cheers was like not doing well when it first came out, and Diane left the show. Arguably for other reasons, but a lot of people were just like, because the show was not doing well.
Yeah, I would assume that
too. So Diane, Shelley Long, I believe her name is, she left. And then the show picked up when it got run in syndication. And I just find that funny because it's like everyone's like, oh, Sam and Diane, but...
Nobody cares.
The show got famous when it was Rebecca and Sam, so who knows. Anyway,
and then she came back every so often.
She came back for the last episode, the last 2 episodes, I think. Yeah, I love that series, but I don't really like how it ended. I think the ending was a little bit surprising for a show that was done back then. You'd think it'd be a little more typical, but it was actually kind of surprising. Anyway, you were talking about Star Trek.
So essentially, when Star Trek started to gain popularity, a bunch of toy makers were like, "We don't have toys for this," and it's like, "Well, what do you have?" And it was like, "Well, we got this gun."
Oh, that's
He's like,
right,
"Can you slap a sticker on it?" And he's like, "Yeah. Let's slap a sticker on this and call it Space Tank, or Space Plane, or Space whatever." And it was just. Like, they showed a bunch of collectors who have all this stuff, and they're just, like, super disappointed in all the toys. Yeah. But these are people that had these toys when they were kids. So they were like, man, when we were kids, all we got was, like... And the most infamous toy that they showed was there was this helmet that had, like, a siren on the top.
And it's
just Spock. And it was, like, a space helmet, and they were just like... Oh my gosh!
It wasn't even a space helmet. It was just
a police helmet that they... Yeah, I know, and it was just like... That's super depressing. That's all they had, and kids had to buy that thinking, well, this is all I get right now, And it wasn't like they got something right away after that or something. They had a couple years where they just had that garbage.
Yeah, other than that, though, I don't remember a lot about the Star Trek episode. I thought it would be a lot more interesting. I thought they would have a lot more Star Trek trivia.
Well, here's the thing. So it was more, like, in that one in particular, it was like, because of the way the movies went, it was like, I always forget the order, but I think it's like the even number movies are great, and then the odd number movies suck.
Okay.
So the cycle for them was like Star Trek the Motion Picture's coming out, which is 1, and they're like, we gotta have a toy line for that, and they're like, okay, we'll get it all set up, and blah blah, and they're like, it didn't do well, and they're like, well, screw it then, and then Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan came out, and that's like arguably the best Star Trek film that they have, and they're like, well, we got to do a toy line, right? And they're like, it didn't really sell well last time, and then that one came out, it did gangbusters, and they were like, where's the toy line? He's like, you said you didn't want a toy line, and so it went back and forth like that, and they could never get it right, It wasn't until, and according to the documentary, it was like TNG, when they started to like really get in there and make some good toys based on the
I've never seen Star Trek The Next Generation, but it was on during the time that Hercules was on, and so when I see clips from that show, it always makes me nostalgic for like that Saturday afternoon like sci-fi time slot. I wonder if I'd like it if I watched it. I don't know, but Hercules and Xena obviously have a special place in my heart. So.
In your heart,
yeah.
What was really interesting is when I heard Star Trek as a kid, like I would say from when I remember actually remembering stuff, I guess you'd say up until 12, that was Star Trek to me.
Was TNG?
It was TNG.
Yeah.
So whenever anybody said Star Trek, I always thought of the TNG suits, the whole black ones with the stripe.
Yeah.
That goes across the chest.
I think those look cool.
Yeah. I think they look great too. And then later on in college, they were like, no, original Star Trek. And you got like Captain Kirk with this kind of really flamboyant shirt with the gold kind of like the gold what is it, trim across it. So I was like, this is Star Trek? It was like, really? I thought it was supposed to be like this really sophisticated, like we're on a mission and blah blah blah. But anyway, that's when the toys actually started doing better because they would actually take the time to model them and they looked better and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think in the series they said in the Toys That Made Us, they said that they were finally catering to the right audience.
Right.
They were catering to like the adults that were fans of the original show.
And then,
which is cool, yeah. Like,
again, this is why this one was the most depressing, was they kept getting stuff right, and then they would do too much or they would do too little, and it would fail. Because then then they started doing things like, oh, you know what? We're only going to release a special edition of this. And it was like limited runs and stuff, and then they started messing it up, and then they started doing too many figurines, and then people were like, I don't want these garbage. Like, this is one person from one episode. Why would I want that?
You know what? I can relate to a lot of this stuff because I was a kid who really liked good-looking toys.
I think everybody is.
Not always. You'd be surprised.
Well, I'll give you an example.
Wait, let me finish my point. I used to have Sonic Adventure toys. Mm-hmm. I had Sonic, Knuckles, and Tails, and I thought they looked amazing. The same toys from that series, the Series 2 that came out, look like trash, but they were apparently from the same series. And it was Rose, Big the Cat, and Dr. Eggman or something like that.
Not Eve.
I had E102 Gamma as well. He looked good because he's a fucking robot. How do you screw that up, you know? But like Sonic looked like the fucking cover art, you know?
Right.
Like Knuckles looked like he should. They were amazing toys and they were really opposable. And they were really sturdy and all this shit. Amy Rose and like Big the Cat looked so fucking bad, and I was so upset with that. And another toy line that really kind of fucked with me, which was later on, was Final Fantasy. They did Play Arts figures, okay? Square Enix did Final Fantasy Play Arts figures for Final Fantasy VII, okay? They do Play Arts now, and those cost like $80.
They're immaculate, though.
They're $80, and they don't look very good. If somebody was sitting in this room with me right now, I could show you Cloud from the original Play Arts series, and he looks amazing. I bought that figure for $25. That was when they were like, we don't know if these are going to do well or anything like that, right?
Right.
That's what they used to look amazing, all this shit. They started making them more expensive, and they looked shittier. I have a Zack.
Oh, yes.
I have a Zack from Crisis Core. Mm-hmm. A Play Arts Zack from Crisis Core.
Yeah.
And his eyes are fucking crooked. And it's the same thing with Eris. Her eyes are like crooked. And it's like, you guys don't understand, these go in a set. I can't fucking like mix and match. They have to go together. And like the completionist inside me wants to have all the figures. Except I'm embarrassed to have these, like, disgusting looking, like, faces on. I don't know, whatever. I was just letting you know that that's how I relate to this Star Trek generation of toy collectors.
Well, I guess that's kind of the frustration because, like, at some point, they got it somewhat right. Mm-hmm. Towards the end of the towards the end of the episodes, they were like, they finally started getting it right because they started reissuing some older toys, and it was like, we got a real looking phaser. Mm-hmm. And it was like, finally. And it fit in an adult hand.
Yeah.
Because the original ones they had were like for children.
And they said that it looked good enough that they used it as a prop in the show, right?
Yeah.
They like used it in one of the episodes.
They weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
But they did.
That's cool.
And so they did.
That's cool for them, you know?
They had like the communicator. They had everything, and they finally kind of understood what their audience really wanted, you know, in terms of toys. And I don't think they had. I don't think they had the benefit of the new Star Treks when they were doing this documentary or whatever.
They did,
but did they?
They had a few, yeah.
Okay, but it seems like Star Trek is still kind of trailing behind Star Wars.
Of course, dude. It's never going to be as big, I think, because
it's not that it's going to be as big. It's just like I can deal with it not being as big as Star Wars, obviously, but like their toy line, their props, the things that they have.
Uh-huh.
When it like they just can't seem to get it right. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I don't know. It's because they don't have enough money, dude. Honestly, it's like Star Wars can take these risks everywhere and still be financially, good.
Mm-hmm.
Star Trek, I feel like, has to make the right decisions, and it's just that they're not making them every single time. I don't know.
It's true. No, and again, that's why that one was the most depressing to me.
Okay.
Because it was like it's the story of like just they keep missing the mark.
Yeah.
But not by so much. The most like I said, my two favorite ones were Star Trek and then Transformers. But before we talk about Transformers, the Hello Kitty one.
The Hello Kitty one I liked just because there was no downs.
No, there was definitely no downs.
As far as I'm concerned, that company started and he just went all the way to the top. It was just a steady climb all the way to the top.
Yeah, the reason I didn't hate I like that one in a way where it was like, this is super interesting because it's the same kind of story that Nintendo had, where they had this dynamite product and their odyssey to try and get it to hit over in North America.
Well, I was the reason I like it is because it was
small gift.
Yeah, small gift, big smile, or whatever he said.
That's the mantra.
It was just another case of that guy being in tune with what people want. Mm-hmm. They were talking about how he bought like sandals or something,
mm-hmm.
and he would just put a tiny little strawberry on it, and people were like, "Oh, that's cute! I want that! I want these sandals now because you put a little strawberry on."
Right.
Or he would buy like teacups
and put little strawberries on.
Yeah, and they're just like, "Oh my god, this is cute! I want this!" Yeah. He had that mindset of like people go gaga over this shit. So let me go ahead and just do this over and over again.
Yeah, the documentary outlines I don't know if it's a tradition, but it's kind of like a thing that, like here in America, sometimes when you go, like, this has kind of been a thing that you do. When you go over to somebody's house and they're making you dinner, mm-hmm. you take wine.
Yeah.
Like, that's a thing we do here, right? So over in Japan, according to them, it's like whenever you're coming over to somebody's house, whenever you
bring them a little gift.
You bring them something small. It has to be small because it's like a small thank you to go with it. So it was like, that was the mindset that he would make these small gifts, but that would be cute.
Yeah.
So that like they would have small gift, big smile was the whole thing.
Yeah.
And I thought what was funny was he came up with the concept of Hello Kitty. In a way that was like, oh, it's a kitty. What's the most cutest thing I could think of? And it was like, what was it? Like a dog at first.
Like the cutest thing I think was a dog.
Uh-huh.
And then the second thing was white cat.
A white cat.
So he was just like, all right, well, we're going with that one.
And the reason he didn't go with a dog, I think it had to do with the fact that Charles M. Schultz had Snoopy.
Yeah, because Snoopy or something like that.
Yeah, something to that effect. And so he went with the small white cat. But there was some things about it that were super interesting. Like, for example, it was revealed in the documentary that Hello Kitty's not her name. Her name is White Kitten or something like that. And she's not Japanese. She's British.
Yeah. Well, the whole Hello Kitty thing came from the fact that she was on a little coin pouch.
Yeah.
Which is their first item, right? Their first Hello Kitty item was this little coin pouch that had her on it, and it just said hello.
Mm-hmm.
So when people were asking for it, they were just like the Hello Kitty.
There you go.
Because they just, they line those things up and boom, there you go.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just crazy too because it's like, I mean, from afar, I guess it just seems like the guy wasn't even trying super hard, and it just kind of he fell into all of this success over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
But what was cool was that he the part of the story I liked was that he commissioned artists to do these characters in the first place. And it's like he knew what was important, like design. Because our art teacher was always telling us, like, design is what sells everything, like there's art in every facet of society.
Mm-hmm.
You need that, so when people are, shelling out big money on things that they think are important, they're not thinking about the design, the artists, and that's what Hello Kitty was emphasizing, which is what I liked about the story.
And she shares something that with Lego where it was consistency, because if you look at the original coin purse that is Hello Kitty, looks like the same Hello Kitty now.
She's exactly the same.
She's exactly the same design, and she was done really in an illustrated kind of way, if that makes sense to you. It's like she's done so that she has a really strong silhouette, and she's always facing the same way, so her head kind of becomes an icon that you can super use, and that was kind of the idea.
It's like Mickey Mouse, yeah.
Yeah, so you could stick that on any number of things, and it would instantly be recognizable.
It wasn't like, you know, when you say like in an illustrative way, I kind of get that you're saying like she wasn't meant to be 3D. That wasn't really like a thought. It was mostly like we can slap her on stuff, and there you go. You know,
they go into the design of it a bit because they talk. The artist who kind of commissioned the work was like, well, you have to make it a certain way because if you have like her eyes too close together, looks normal. If you have them smaller and she has a big head, it tends to make her look cuter.
Yeah, if you like squish the faces down.
Yeah, so they went through and they were like, "This is what makes Hello Kitty look cute."
When I saw that on my television, I was like, "They're fucking giving away all my secrets here.
They're giving away all the seeks."
Yeah, because art teachers tell you that too. It's like there's something about putting the eyes farther away,
it makes them
and
cute.
squishing the face down that gives you like that
Childlike
ratio.
Yeah.
Of like the kind of like the smaller box with the long box on top of it. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, now people are just gonna know this shit.
Just because they know it doesn't mean they can do it.
But yeah.
So that was kind of cool. But like most of the documentary was about how they were trying to get her to work here in America, the U.S. Yeah. And they wanted like Hello Kitty to be as big as possible over here. So they opened the Sanrio store. And the great thing about the way those operated was it was a lot of merchandise that was always changing.
Yeah.
So like a small set of products would go out. It was like, here's Hello Kitty on a notebook, and here she is with a pen, and here she is in an eraser. But we only have 100 of these, so once these are gone, then we're never making them again, so more.
Yeah.
And it was all stuff that was relatively small and
like stationary crap, yeah.
Yeah. So you would always have money to buy these kind of things because they were like, our customers are going to be little girls and boys, so they need things that cost like $1 or $2, or at the most, like they have these huge stuffed animals, and they're like, maybe one day they'll be able to purchase those. But they made less of the big items and a lot of the small items because they knew the kids would be purchasing these little items.
Yeah.
And it was a new concept in the Americas because in Japan, everything had to be compact.
You know what's funny though is like, okay, what were you saying? Finish up your thoughts.
Okay, so like for example, here when we got a pencil box from like Walmart or anything, it's just a pencil box.
Yeah. And
then you bought the other stuff, and it was all kind of in bulk, right?
Yeah.
But when you bought something like a pencil case from Sanrio, it was cool because you'd open it and then it'd have a pencil sharpener, and it would come with a slot for 2 pencils, and then it would have an eraser that you could kind of push out of it. Like everything was designed to fit together in this little box to save space.
Right.
And that was the new concept, was like all these things that are really small and compact because you don't have a lot of room, and then there's not going to be around forever. Right. It's not like, hey, here's a pencil box from Lisa Frank. It's the same one you're going to get every year until we create a new series in like 3 years. No, it was like, this is going to be here a month, and then by next month when you come back in, new pencil set.
I was going to say that I remember when our sisters would go to the Sanrio store, they would complain that everything was fucking expensive.
Well, so at that point, it might have been like she was probably a hit by then.
Maybe she was a hit, or maybe it was just like, you know, expensive to a kid and inexpensive to an adult are two different things, right?
Yeah.
I just remember them going to get those like those little fishing poles, and you could hook like a little bag of.
Yeah.
And I remember always saying like, I want one of those, and they were like, you can't. You're a boy. This shit isn't for you. And I was like, but I like the little characters. I think the little characters look cool. And I would always steal my sister's our sister, I should say. They really liked Pachaco, which was...
That was the duck?
That was the duck, okay. Yeah. Karopi.
That was the frog.
And what was the dog's name?
I don't remember the dog.
You remember the dog? He looked essentially like Snoopy.
There was one of them called Aruna Peckle.
That one, I think it was his name.
I don't think that was it. No.
Wait,
Aruna Peckle was the... I think Aruna Peckle was the bird.
The penguin was Bant Maru or something.
Yeah, that I remember.
Well, anyway, I used to steal her little stamps. She had little stamps with the duck on them.
Yeah, but see, remember...
and I would always take them.
I remember that was part of her, like, little... I remember she had, like, this little pencil box.
Uh-huh.
And if you pushed a button, it would pop out like a little ink
like a
set
shelf,
and a little shelf, and it had the little stamps.
It was awesome, dude. I really liked it. I liked it as a kid. But like I said, they were like...
They weren't for boys.
Slapping my hand away. No. Those are not for boys. Get out of here.
So essentially, like... Okay, so...
I'll show them.
Essentially, the documentary is like, hey... Hello Kitty in Japan, now Hello Kitty in America. And it was a slow burn, but eventually it was like everybody's wearing Hello Kitty. Stars are wearing Hello Kitty.
Moral of the story is small gift, big smile.
Yeah, and they show that Hello Kitty is like anytime Hello Kitty is used by celebrities and everything, they're like, we don't tell them to do like celebrity stuff. They just do it.
Yeah, let me just talk about the Transformers one real fast. Because the Transformers one was also pretty straightforward. They basically repurposed a bunch of toys from Japan that were not Transformers, but they said, hey, let's go ahead and take this robot and this robot and this robot. We'll buy them up, and we'll just make a show out of them, which I didn't know. I was like, I always knew that they had like a Japanese beginning,
mm-hmm.
but I didn't know how, and I guess that was it. And it was cool because you look at the company that made the original Transformers, and they still have like photographs in a book, like a photo album. Yeah. Like, oh, this is this design from this year. This is the one from this year. And they still have ones that they were like not even in production. Right. They had ones that they were like, we're ready to ship this one out if people want it, or if like somebody. And I was like, that's so fucking insane.
That one in particular is a great story of localization, because what they did with Transformers was, like Steven already kind of said, robots and transforming robots were huge in Japan, but like decades before we got them.
Right.
And at a toy fair, one guy saw these robots and he says, you know what? Buy the license to that, and I think I can do something with it. And then that episode starts with them taking all these toys and dropping them in front of this guy, and he's like, I need you to write a backstory to all of these guys. And he was just like, okay, this guy's name is Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
And he's like, what sounds menacing? Like Megatron or something? And it's like, he literally created the G1 Transformers out of all these repurposed robots that Japan had forever.
Yeah.
But the fact that he put them together and created Autobots and Decepticons, and he created this whole backstory with a comic book, and then later on, it was a cartoon, became this huge phenomenon. Like what you were saying about Lego Bionicle
guy, he had
the same thing applied here.
He had the same mentality. It was like he wasn't just some guy that was like, this is my job, I have to do this. This was like, he looked at these and he saw like, I want to know the origin of these guys. I want to make them a planet. I'm going to make them complete backstories and all that, And
it's a cool, like, if you've ever known kind of the G1 story of Transformers, it's essentially like Superman, where their planet got destroyed. They came to Earth because they crashed here, and now they fight each other. One side is trying to save the human race.
Yeah, they found Shia LaBeouf. They found Megan Fox. They
But
saw the glasses on eBay.
Okay, so sorry. So anyway, like, what they went through was basically, we made a hit right away, and we tapped out when it came to the movie, because when they got to the movie, the shit was huge, right?
Yeah.
Great soundtrack, and they had great animation. They had this huge toy that was like a world, literally a planet that transforms. And they did something super bold in that, and it's spoiler alerts if you haven't seen the Transformers movie, but they kill off Optimus Prime.
Yeah.
Because the business model of it was like, okay.
Optimus Prime.
Sorry, Optimus Prime.
No, I said Optimus.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow. So essentially they're like, okay, this is the toy line up until now. Here's the movie. We kill off all the characters, and then we make a new toy line for the next series. And it sounds like a solid plan, except for the fact that Optimus Prime is probably one of the most distinct characters from the 80s.
Yeah.
Because of the combination of him being a robot, that Transformer sound, and the guy, what's his name? Peter something's voice.
Peter Cullen's
voice.
I wanted to talk about that too for a second. It is true what you're saying. Because just like Street Fighter 3, when they were making Street Fighter 3, they're like, all right, we're going to have all these new characters. And then like somewhere in production, they're just like, you know what? We're not going to be able to sell the goddamn game without Ken and Ryu, so let's just drop them back in.
You just gotta have them. You gotta have them.
It's true.
You just
like if you're
something has to bridge the two.
If you have Transformers, you have to have Optimus Prime.
And you
like
have to have Megatron.
Yeah, how are you not going to fucking have them, right?
Yeah.
The story about how Peter Cullen made the voice for Optimus Prime was really nice and wholesome, and almost made me tear up.
It brought a tear to my eye.
He's talking about how he was about to go into a Voices character, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he was leaving the house, and his brother, who was a Marine, right? He was a Marine. That's what he was.
Yeah.
He stops him, and he was like, "Oh, where are you going?" He's like, "Oh yeah, I gotta go voice this guy. He's a big robot. He's the leader of the Autobots, and all this stuff." And he told him like, "All right, well, don't be one of these cheesy, heroic voice actors that you see in G.I. Joe or anything. Like, when you go out there, speak like a leader and be like a hero. Be somebody that people want to look up to." And he gave like this fucking elaborate description of like, I guess like what this guy was seeing in war or something, or something from his own life. And Peter was just like, "All right, man, I'll take that into consideration." And he said when he got into the booth, it was just his brother talking, because his brother was somebody that he looked up to as like this war hero and like this like symbol of leadership. And I was like, damn, like I did not know all of this.
I mean, it shows in the performance. I remember he was saying something like, a leader's the one that protects the people that he can't protect, and his sacrifice as a leader is what you need to kind of project. And it's just like, when you hear that, and he says, "So now when I speak as Optimus Prime, I speak like my brother."
Yeah.
I think at the end they tacked on that his brother passed away in the war.
Oh, that sucks.
So it was like, that's how he carries on the memory of his brother. Or maybe it was later on, but I know he wasn't with them at the time of the filming. So I was like, oh man, that adds a whole new level to it.
Yeah.
After that, like, they go through this whole transition where they're still trying to make new robots and everything, but at that point, every one of these Toy Series have their downfall kind of part, right?
Yeah.
And that was them until they made Beast Wars, which kind of rejuvenated the series. And I was
surprised to hear that, actually.
Yeah, because they were surprised, because at the time 3D animation was super new. So textures and modeling were pretty stiff. But for a show about robots, it worked perfectly.
Somehow, because I remember shows like Reboot, where I was like, why are they green and blue and all this shit?
Because
and it was just like,
they're part of
well, in my head,
this is mainframe.
All I could think in my head was like, they had limitations, dude. Like,
they did.
They were looking for other ways to be wacky. Like, if they could have the kid be green or whatever the fuck he is, and have him be green, because they're not going to have many polygons to work with.
We're not going to start talking about Reboot.
And it was expensive.
I have a lot of opinions about Reboot.
And it was expensive.
It was super expensive.
Yeah. So I was really surprised to hear that Beast Wars was a huge hit, because I never really saw it as a show that had like continuity or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. It did. It had a huge It had a huge arc.
No, yeah, apparently it did. But what I'm telling you is, like, I would wake up at like 6 a.m. and watch it sometimes on Channel 13, and that was it. Mm-hmm. Like, it wasn't like Pokemon or like something that I was waking up specifically to watch. It was like I would catch the end of it when I'm like going out to school or something. It was like fucking Monster Rancher or something, not like a real.
So in Beast Wars, it was really cool because the same premise happens. They crash land, but they crash land on a planet that just has animals inhabiting it. So when they go into disguise mode, instead of being cars, they're beasts. And I gotta say, I don't know why it worked, but Optimus Prime as a gorilla was like, yes, of course he would be a gorilla. And then like the way that they all interacted.
Optimus Primal, right? That's his name.
Optimus Primal, that's correct. And they had like Cheetor and all this kind of stuff. So it was Bumblebee essentially. It was really cool because at some point it was like the two factions, and then there was the third faction who was the Insectoids.
Yeah.
And it was just like it was so cool to see the series rejuvenated, and like they started coming up with their own. Like they showed throughout the series that the Japanese had their original models, but eventually the American ones came up with their own, and they were like, wow, these are cool. Even the Japanese side of it, they were like, wow, that's cool. We should bring that over here. And it was kind of this, like, everybody started to understand.
Yeah, now it was like this collaboration. Not so much like we have the money.
Exactly.
And, we're using your ideas.
Exactly.
It's crazy, too, because when you hear that guy talking about, like, his creations being on television, he's, like, so humbled by the idea that, like, people even liked it that much.
Yeah.
He's like, man, I just wanted to make a car that turns into a guy. And you guys have made it into, like, Optimus Prime. And you guys, like, love this show and all this shit. And I'm like...
And it's so wholesome.
Yeah.
The guy looks so genuinely wholesome. Like, he's a toy maker in every sense of the word.
That's so cool. Like, they're really nice stories to listen to.
And whatever you think about the movies.
Uh-huh.
I mean, you can hate them, you can love them, you can think they're, like, racist or whatever. It's just amazing to see how far the toy has come from, like, those humble beginnings of being a transformable robot to these, like, billion-dollar movies.
Yeah, they're actually making a Bumblebee movie, too.
Yeah, why not? Because why not?
I don't know. People were actually saying that the designs were, like, a lot better. Or at least because it's Bumblebee, right?
Yeah.
He's a bug.
Sure.
He's not the Camaro.
Well, that'll be interesting.
So he's a lot more rounded. He doesn't look like he doesn't look all crazy like the ones in the first film.
Yeah.
Well,
like in that, like, it was so like they picked really good toy series to do in season 2.
Uh-huh.
Like season 1 was like those are the bare bones versions of them.
Yeah.
But this second season felt so diverse because even though they all went through their ups and downs, I feel like every single one of them had such a unique story, even though they're all in the same, like, business. Yeah. They're all competing in the toy business, and yet each one of them has such a unique story of success and failure.
Yeah.
That I was like, wow, this is super diverse.
Which one was the one where the guy was like a sleaze? Was that in season 1?
No.
Do you know who I'm talking about?
Yes, I do know who you're talking about.
What series was that?
It was, hold on. It was it was Star Trek, and it was...
Was it Transformers? I don't think it was Transformers.
No, it was in Star Trek.
I
think it was Star Trek, where the guy was selling... he turned down the Star Trek license, or the Star Wars license.
Oh, okay, maybe.
But he was the one that originally made the Star Trek, like, models for the first generation ones, and then he kind of lost it all. But I didn't want to focus on that because it was just like that's not a.
We're not focusing on the negative here. But I would highly recommend it.
If you haven't seen it, it's a great thing to watch, especially if you haven't seen season 1. Season 1 is just like, it has a great diversity too. Especially the story of He-Man.
Yeah.
That one is probably the most interesting one out of that series, aside from maybe Star Trek or Star Wars.
It just amazes me how these people don't even expect the stuff that happens to them. Like,
it's amazing cool. Because it's a toy industry.
And I mean, it's something that, like, well, whatever. That's it. That's all I wanted to say. But real quick before we end this, is there any toy that you thought you were gonna see in that show that you did not see? Like, I can't think of one right off the top of my head, but there was ones that I was like, oh, maybe they'll do this. Mm-hmm. I was not expecting, like, Hello Kitty or, like, Star Trek. I kind of thought Star Trek was covered in the Star Wars episode, but, whatever. Was there one that you wanted to see, or, like...
To be honest, no. Because the thing about it is, like, they covered the big ones. Mm-hmm. They covered a lot of the big ones coming up, because G.I. Joe, Barbie... Star Wars, and what was the last one? The last one was...
I think they could have done Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles would have been big.
I think Ninja Turtles could have been there, but it's like...
Because if you think about it, they're not going off of, like, the story of Mattel. This is
I guess I don't think Ninja Turtles goes back that far. Because all of these things have been from the 80s.
Isn't Ninja Turtles in the 80s?
I want
to say it did start in the 80s.
I think the comic book was definitely in the 80s, but I don't remember when the first movie came out. Because I thought the first movie came out in, like, 93.
I think, it has a story. there's definitely a story there, you know?
Of course there is, yeah. But, like, I was trying to think... in my head, I'm trying to think what toy from the 80s is still around and is still relevant today.
You mean
that's the...
Besides, like, Nintendo, I guess, because that would count.
Well, that's more video game stuff, you know what I mean? Like,
well, back then it was just toys. Back then they were considered toys, so it's not
but, like, I was trying to think of something that's 80s and still around and it's been, like, rejuvenating. The only thing I can think of that's like that is, like, Disney stuff.
Yeah. I mean, anything that's kind of had a resurgence nowadays because, like, geek culture is, like, financially viable. They covered them, like Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Transformers are the things that people want to see. And
the only thing... Oh, you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, one of the things that they could have covered, and maybe they wanted to stay away from it because of how it's being received now, is My Little Pony. Because that was one of those... That was like...
Yeah, that would have been
little boys had Transformers, little girls had My Little Pony.
Maybe they just didn't want to be affiliated with, like, either side of that argument, you know?
Well, like I said, what it is now is, like, the brony stuff with, what is that? It's called Friendship is Magic, I think is the subtitle to that one, My Little Pony Friendship is Magic. That one is such a far, just, like, it's so far from the original that, I don't know, maybe it's too far.
Well, yeah, from what I hear, they're trying to make it a little more, diverse, right? It's not just all girly. They're trying to make it like a show that has morals and stuff like that.
Right.
Yeah, I don't
know. Like that's
the
like, not that I would want to see that because I have really because I
not that I would want to be affiliated with those people, but
no, but like the I remember watching those movies because when we were kids, it was like Care Bears and My Little Pony and He-Man. Like those are the cartoons that would come on. I never liked that series.
To be honest, I was born in the 90s. When I saw these 80s shows, I wanted to throw up constantly. But that's just me because I'm a 90s kid. If you guys don't know that, I'm a cool 90s kid. Tiny Toons and like Animaniacs, Freakazoid, and like shit like that were things that like were more in tune with what I like to see. Earthworm Jim, things like that. And I don't know, like, I'm not talking shit, you know, on you know, those 80s cartoons, but I would just see like how they all kind of had the same face and I didn't really like, you know, like like how Thundercats and He-Man and like G.I. Joe
very Hanna-Barbera kind of animation.
They all kind of look the same. I mean, I guess the same could be said about 90s cartoons too, but like, you know, I don't think Gargoyles looks like Men in Black. I don't think Batman Beyond necessarily looks like, you know, anything else. Maybe it does. I don't know.
It's very Bruce Timm.
Sure, people will point out, you know, how I'm wrong here. You know, yeah, I guess you're right, Bruce Timm, the Batman.
But I understand what you're saying. Like, Pokemon doesn't look like anything else.
Yeah.
At least not anything Americanized at the time.
Right.
But like something like Darkwing Duck didn't look like
Pokemon would have been a big one, I think. They could have totally done that.
That was the 90s, though.
Yeah.
Again, I think they could definitely do it.
Yeah.
Because of the phenomenon it's had. It like the phenomenon it was and still is to this point. But again, these are things that started in the 80s.
I cannot understand that shit, dude.
You were on the first one.
What?
You kind of understand it. You played Pokemon Red.
All right, you know what? This is the end of the podcast. Let me just put this out there, okay? I'm sure the only the hardcore fans are listening right now. Let me just give you the lowdown. Let me just give you a breakdown of my problem with Pokemon, okay?
You really want to put this in here?
Yes.
All right.
I want to put this in there. This is the official.
We're out of time, Steve.
This is the official statement, okay?
Okay.
Yeah, I know it's pretty late. I bought Pokemon Blue, okay? When we were little kids.
Mm-hmm.
You got Pokemon Red. Mm-hmm. I got mad because I wanted Charmander. We traded games, okay? I got red version, you had blue version. I played it as a kid with a small brain, and I loved it, okay?
Okay.
Easy concept for a kid to understand. Who's that? Oh, he only says his name. I remember that name. I get it.
Right.
Easy concept.
Plus you had the Pokemon Rap.
Right, Pokemon Rap, okay? The next one comes out. I'm pretty sure I played a gold version, okay? I skipped a few after that because I was like, you know what? They're getting kind of bland to me. I'm kind of over Pokemon, right?
Okay.
X comes out. Everyone's making a big deal about X. They're like, you know what? You get new Pokemon in X, but like halfway through the game, you get an original starter. So you can get Charmander if you want. I'm like, cool. I'll do that. I'm going to do that, okay? I get Froakie at the beginning.
Okay.
And I get Charmander halfway through. And I'm playing this game and I'm like, alright, this is kind of cool. The only thing that really got me in that game was the fact that I could buy clothes from my trainer.
Okay.
I'm a customizing guy. I like customization, okay?
Yes, you do.
I'm playing this game in public, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm playing this game on my 3DS, and people are constantly like, are you playing Pokemon? What is this guy playing? What are you, a fucking little kid? Hey, there's girls around, right? You're playing Pokemon? Are you a fucking little kid? And I'm like, yeah, I don't give a shit, or whatever. I just want to play this game, alright? Okay?
Okay. Pokemon
Go comes out, okay?
Right.
And everyone now is like, whoa, dude, I always love Pokemon. No. Now it's on my phone. Now, the original 150? Nah, these are the ones I like. No, I love Pokemon. I've always loved Pokemon. Fuck you. I've always loved Pokemon. And at that point, I'm just like, okay, so Pokemon isn't even like an intellectual thing. Pokemon is just stupid shit that people are just going to latch onto because it's some childhood memory. I get it now. That's exactly what it is. And even just seeing the way like the Pokemon company sometimes treats people, like they're just suing people left and they're that guy that wanted to have like orchestrated Pokemon music and they sued him for like $10,000. Wow. He had to have a Kickstarter and he made like a video of himself crying or something because he didn't have this money to pay. I think they took the loss. They retracted the lawsuit or whatever. But it's like, this is a company. This isn't your childhood friend. Like, they're just here to bleed you out of all your fucking money. It's just a company. Like, it was cool when you were a little kid. If you want to buy your kids Pokemon shit, whatever. But like as an adult, please don't treat that shit like it's your way of life. Like, it's not. It's so not that. The games aren't even good. They're like the same shit over and over again. Like, what was the last one that came out? Sun and Moon?
Yes.
That one sold the best. And it's because of Pokemon Go. Because Pokemon is big again. Because Pokemon is hot again. You know? Whatever. That's my problem with Pokemon. I see it now for what it is. It's a lie. It's a sham. It's a scandal. It's a scam. So I'm just like, I don't need it, okay? It's just whatever. I don't care about it.
Well, what about Pokemon Snap?
Pokemon Snap. You know that game's only like $1 now? You can find that game real cheap.
We should play that.
Why wouldn't they make a sequel to Pokemon Snap with all this shit going on?
Especially with the Wii U being a camera in itself, they should have.
No, there was things about Pokemon that I liked. I told you the other day that like Pokemon Stadium had amazing mini games. Those are some of the coolest mini games ever. Yeah. It's just that like I just see so many things that they do now that are just so low effort, and people are just like, "Oh yes, yes, give it to me, yes, I want that." Pokemon, they're like, "We got your Switch game, guys. Pokemon Eevee and Pokemon Pikachu. Get the fuck out of here with that shit, dude. All right, that's not even a real game. That's like an app. You're gonna pay $60 for an app."
And they got that Pokemon peripheral.
Oh my god, dude, this is just such like garbage, dude. Like, don't do that. Have self-respect, all right? You fucking look in the mirror, all right? That's it.
You act like I keep buying Pokemon stuff. I know you're yelling at the crowd, but I'm the only one in the room right now.
I'm not yelling at you. I'm not yelling at anybody, all right? I'm just saying, think about it, okay? Next time you pick up that fucking Pikachu lunchbox, think about it, all right? That Ash Ketchum hat, you don't need it, okay?
You don't need it.
They have enough money. They're their own company now, dude.
Yep.
They're not even part of Nintendo anymore.
Game Freak.
They're like, they might as well be. That's like Microsoft and Xbox, dude. Mm-hmm. Xbox just got so big, it's its own company. Yeah. But okay, so I've dragged this out long enough. I'm sorry, guys. I just needed to get that out there. Any final thoughts, Ernie?
Final thoughts? Definitely go watch The Toys That Made Us.
Yes, go watch
Especially if you're our age. They're really cool, interesting delves into the toy industry.
Yeah.
That's what they really are, is they're really eye-opening looks at the toy industry.
If you're a 90s kid or a late 80s kid, go check that out. Right?
Yeah, definitely. And you know what? Pokemon is fine with me. If you're into it, great. If you're not into it, that's great too. But I will say, just like you were saying, I don't know when you said, but the Rick and Morty crowd.
Uh-huh.
They kill Rick and Morty for me.
It's just
a lot. So well, hold on.
Yeah, go for it.
So it's like the Rick and Morty crowd sometimes kill it for me. Is like this. That's the fandom, and they kill the product for me. And I think that Pokemon suffers from the same problem.
I think it's a bit of a difference though, because like my whole point was like there's nothing in Pokemon.
But
there's no like to me there's like no value in Pokemon. But at least Rick and Morty is like a good show.
It's a good show, but what I'm saying is that the crowd or the whatever, they take the stupidest parts of it and idolize those parts of it.
Yes, I will say that.
And that's the same thing for Pokemon
fandoms just they tend to ruin things,
And and then eventually they're like, why do we even have to do a good job? We'll just crap this out and they'll be fine with it. Like one game the Pokemon came out was like this weird dungeon game that they come out with.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is garbage, but people bought it up because it's Pokemon.
We bought it.
So yeah, I just said we bought it and it was garbage. But anyway, I don't know if I'll be getting the new Pokemon, to be honest, because I'm tired of that principle. So, it's good. It's fine.
Yeah, I would recommend Toys That Made Us. Please go watch that. We're going to try to go watch Incredibles ASAP so we can talk about it.
And maybe I'll watch Deadpool 2 finally.
Oh, yeah. And just to clarify, okay?
Okay.
This whole Pokemon thing.
Dude, we're running so late.
Do whatever you want with your time. I'm just trying to explain why I personally am just not interested, okay? Why that ship has sailed, okay? Right. The SS Anne, is that what it's called?
Yes.
It sailed on Pokemon, okay?
Okay.
That's it, all right? Good night. We'll see you next time, guys.
See you next time, guys.